If you watched last week's video, I thank you for that. I'll put a link at the end of this to it. This is a sister piece of that piece of wood, and I've got to be honest with you, this piece of wood has probably puzzled me more than any other as to what I'm going to do with it. Stay tuned and see if I made the right decision. So if you watched my video last week, I thank you for that. This is a sister piece. And as I mentioned last week, I think it was one of the prettiest pieces of wood I've ever turned. So I do have a sister piece. I was thinking I would make the same shape, although that would be boring for back-to-back videos. But I can't, because this is an odd shape. There was a reason I picked the other one first. This here would be big enough. The other one was 6.5 inches round, which is plenty, and it was 4.5 inches high. This is 7 inches high, so it would look like I could get that, except for the fact of this. This comes into the side, so that was bark. This was the outside of the burl, so I might be able to, because right here is where it starts to get narrow fast. I might be able to get enough shape if I just took the bottom off here. The problem would be I wouldn't have enough material, unless I made it a lot shallower, but I wouldn't have enough material for a top because I can't get it out of this piece, and I'm going to need all of what's left if I want to do the same shape. Go back and take a look at that video so it's clear what I'm talking about. I think what I'll do is just a small bowl. This will be the bottom. This will be the top. It'll be 6.5 inches in diameter, 4 inches tall. It's beautiful wood. It'll make a nice bowl. I think that's about all I can do with this piece of wood, unfortunately, because of this taper here. So let's go ahead, cut it up a little bit, get it started, and then we'll get it back on the lathe. So there you go, I have it mounted between centers. Now I think you can see what I'm talking about. This here, which is my bottom, I've maintained fairly flat. Had I moved this center down to capture more solid top, it would have tipped this whole thing this way, and I would have lost this material when I flattened it up. So .450 RPM, so that's pretty good actually. So it's fairly well balanced. So this piece was a little too tall to round up on my bandsaw, so I just chose to use my roughing gouge. And you can see here in the beginning, it's not cutting a lot of material because I'm only hitting the corners. Most of the time I'm turning air, but you'll see here as it progresses along, I'll start cutting more and more. So I gotta tell you, this piece has me puzzling a little more than most. So it's round, and you can see this is the issue. There's nothing here. Now, I could form this up, pour that as epoxy, and then I'd have all that to work with. Or I could turn this shape. A vase, I guess, with a fairly narrow opening to get rid of this bark on the side, and then come down to a fairly fat bottom. So that would be one option. The second option is make two pieces out of it, one for sure, possibly a second. Let's turn a bowl out of this piece, which would be a normal traditional bowl, and then I'd have something down here at the bottom, which would be kind of a flat platter plate. Half of that plate's going to be missing because of this, up near the rim, because the rim over here would be here, and it's going to be missing. So I don't know that that piece would be much to look at. This would be, you know, a very traditional shape, and it's got good solid wood. So this one, not a traditional shape, and it's going to be a fairly small opening in order to be able to hollow down in through here. So again, I'm not really sure. You'll be as surprised as I am. I spent a lot of time looking this over and thinking about it, and you can see here I've decided to go with a traditional bowl up near the top where my drive is, and the piece left over on the bottom, and we'll see what we can do with that. But with this piece of wood, I think that was probably my best option. So I just used my parting tool, cut through most of the way, and then finished it up with a handsaw. And you can see here the piece that's going to be the plate, if I can get something out of that, and then this bottom piece will be my bowl. I did turn a tenon on it. It's mounted in the lathe now on that tenon, and now I'm just working on the bottom. Just using my bowl gouge here, doing some push cuts and just shaping the bottom. It's cutting fairly well. Burls usually do because of the grain orientation not being in grain. And at this point, all I'm doing is stopping once in a while and making sure that I've removed that bark on the bottom, because I want to get rid of most of that on the outside. And therefore, I'm just stopping every once in a while and checking it. This will be a similar shape to what I did last week. Again, if you want to go back and take a look at that video. Fairly straight wall bowl, fairly deep compared to the diameter as well. Almost through that bark inclusion there. I'll end up taking a little bit more off, shortening the bowl up a little bit just to get rid of it, and again, just keep going until I clean that up. I haven't talked about this in a while, but there you saw me doing a pull cut. So basically on the outside of a bowl, I'll do two types of cuts. Right now I'm doing a push cut going downhill, and a minute ago I was doing a pull cut, so pulling the tool towards me. Almost through that bark inclusion, just very little left there now. So I'm going to flatten the bottom off here now, get rid of this tenon altogether. This time around, and it's something I don't do as often, but I decided rather than hold the bowl when I turn it around with a tenon, I'm going to go with a mortise on this, and you'll see that here in a second. But the first thing is to get rid of this tenon on the bottom and then create the mortise. So here, if you look on the bottom of the bowl, you can see the mortise. So if you don't know the difference, mortise and tenon are the two options to hold the bottom of the bowl. A tenon, which I normally use, think of that as a male, and the mortise is a female. I think that's probably enough description to distinguish between the two. So the difference, though, with a mortise means that you're holding it in your chuck under expansion. You open it up and it expands out into that mortise to hold it. Whereas a tenon, you squeeze down on it to hold it. Here I'm using my negative rake scraper. If you watch to the left of my tool, you can see some lines, And as I pass the negative rake scraper up over the side of the bowl, you'll see those lines disappearing. And you can also see the shavings that are coming off. They're quite fine, and that gives you a very nice finished cut. Still have a couple more lines there that I'm going to work at removing, but a few passes with this scraper generally will do the trick. Time spent scraping is going to be less time that you need to spend sanding. Now, just off camera, I did a final pass with my negative rake scraper at 1000 RPM. And I just want to make a comment here. This here surface is ready to sand. I could probably start at a very high grit. I could probably start at 180. It's smooth already. And that's what you want. And this is a nice hard wood, and that helps. But you want to get that so that you're not spending time sanding. A little bit of time with a scraper, like minutes, can save you 10, 15 minutes sanding. So, I mean, this is in really good shape. I will touch it up. I'll probably still start at 80, just because that's what I have here. But it won't take long to go up through the grits. And this outside is in good shape and ready to go. It doesn't disappoint. This wood is as pretty as its sister. It's got lots of burl eyes in it. So a little bit of bark inclusions. Very pretty wood. As usual, I'm going to completely finish the outside of the bowl before moving to the inside. So I'm going to sand it, and I will end up using a combination of sheet that you see here, and then moving up to power sanding the outside of the bowl before applying any finish. Now it's flipped around. The outside does have, I took it up to 220 and applied sanding sealer. I haven't gone any higher than that, and I haven't applied the polish yet, just because I wanted the sanding sealer to raise the grain and let it dry before I finished it. So I decided to move on to the inside, and then I'll come back and finish the outside and inside together. You can see here, cutting very, very well. The bowl gouge is doing a good job at removing material. I find this shot here, for some reason, very entertaining and relaxing. Just seeing the shavings coming off in slow motion, you get an idea of just how big the shavings are and how quickly they come off. Now the inside is finished. I use my thickness caliper. Pay attention to the opening that you see on the right hand side. What I'm looking for here is that it's consistent. So as I slide down the bowl, that distance stays the same, because the distance on the right side of this caliper is the same as what's in the bowl on the left side. So it gives me an idea. Now obviously right there I do have a thick spot, and I can feel that with my hands. That's just down near the bottom of the bowl, and I'll spend a little bit more time just removing that material right at the transition point from the sides to the bottom. With that done, I switch to power sanding on the inside of the bowl. I'm not showing it all here, I'm just showing one grit, but just give you an idea of how the inside of the bowl is sanded. And I started here with 80 grit. I probably could have started higher. It was fairly smooth. That's what I have, so that's where I started. A few passes, and then each grit a few successive passes. Now I'm applying my homemade abrasive paste, and I have a video if you're interested in that and how I make that. So what you do is you apply it, generally with the lathe off, because otherwise it just flings it off. Rub it in a little bit, and then switch to a clean section of the cloth and keep rubbing it until the cloth remains clean and you don't see any more material on it. Once I've done that, then I switch to my polishing paste, which is beeswax, carnauba wax, and mineral oil. Again, the video shows how I made that as well. And same thing, I apply it with the lathe off, and then the difference with this one is I rub it in. And at this point, you want to generate a little bit of heat. Because of that wax, you actually want to get it hot, and that will melt it in and smooth it out, and leaves a very nice polished finish. Now, for a bonus section, you're going to get to see what I've done with that other piece that was taken off the top of the bowl. Again, it's not solid, so it will not give me a top like I had before in last week's video, but I will be able to turn a plate out of it, so stay tuned and see how that turns out. Turning the plate is no different than turning a bowl. I worked on the outside and then switched to the inside. The only difference with this piece is 30% of the time I'm turning air. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. Here's a picture of the bowl. You can see the bark inclusions and the burl eyes in it, these black dots you see up near the rim. Very beautiful piece of wood. The inside of the bowl, again, still some bark inclusions. Very, very pretty wood. Here's the other piece that was left over. I'm calling it a plate. It's fairly small, and you can see that it's almost 50% of it that is missing. Still very, very pretty wood. Bark inclusions, and you can see the burl eyes in this. Here's the three pieces, the one from last week plus the two from this week. Again, thank you very much for watching the videos.